This episode may not be suitable for everyone because it contains some sensitive material, including mention of suicide ideation. Information shared is based on personal experiences and not meant to replace medical, psychological, or other professional help.
I was in such a deep depression. I said, I feel like we're all born with a quota of words, and I feel like I've used up mine. And there was a sense of whether I lived or whether I didn't, there was no difference in the world to anybody or anything. And we can create a brand new script. We can create a brand new sense of who we are, who we want to be. To say that it changed my life is an understatement.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 2 of the Uprooted by Unwanted Change podcast about managing life transitions. I'm your host, Kiran Prasad. Today's tips for rootedness are about NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's a tool used for personal development, business coaching, and mental well-being. In this episode, you'll learn all about it and how it might help transform our lives after unwanted change. Now, NLP, from what I've learned, it actually originated in my home state of California, USA, in the 70s. Lately, I keep hearing about it on social media. There's been just such a revival, it seems. That's why it's everywhere, especially in the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and India, where there's such great demand for it. Now, I'm not an expert on this topic, and that's why I've brought in someone who is, Aliyah Mohyeddin. Aliyah was highly referred to me by Nadia Jamil. Nadia raves about you, Aliyah, and about your NLP masterclass that she took. She credits NLP with having changed her life. So I found it all very intriguing when I heard about it from her as well. So welcome, Aliyah. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Kiran. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for also navigating recording across time zones because it's late evening for you in Karachi, Pakistan, and it's 7 a.m. for me in California, and I'm not an early bird, so I might need that extra cup of chai or coffee this morning.
That's absolutely fine. Those are the benefits. Those are the benefits of the modern world, to be able to connect so easily across time zones, cultures, boundaries, etc. It's fantastic.
So you're no stranger to working internationally because you do that all the time, which I'm going to run through now about your very impressive background and with your NLP credentials as well.
Thank you.
You are a CEO and founder of Dynamic Communications Consulting and a globally recognized master trainer of NLP, consultant and leadership coach. You have nearly 2 decades of experience in leadership development, human behavior, and conflict resolution, working internationally with leaders and teams to build resilience, strengthen communication, and navigate change with confidence. And also as an international ambassador for the Association of NLP, member of the International Trainers Association, and a senior member of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, you bring deep expertise and global perspective to your work. So was that everything? I hope I covered everything.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
So, Alia, now we know about your professional background. I'd really love for us to get to know who Alia is outside of the work that you do. And you've been known to say that our childhood shapes us, but it doesn't have to define us. So, how did your childhood help shape you?
Such a great question. First of all, what I am and who I am outside of work and all of very generously described by you is I'm a mother of 2 gorgeous children. I'm a mother of 2 crazy dogs, and I'm a mother of 2 fluffy cats. And in a way, they are the most important things in my life. Yeah, I do believe that our childhood, the past does not have to define us in the present or in the future. And it does play a role, of course. And what I mean really by that is that, whatever happens in the past happens. It doesn't have to influence the present or the future. Now, having said that, I'm one of the lucky people, I believe. I had a very beautiful childhood growing up. I think I was quite blessed. My mother was Australian, father's Pakistani. And so I was brought up into very different cultures. And my mother was Christian, Australian, white. My father was Pakistani, Muslim. And I was brought up in an environment between both the countries and also with two parents who were very respectful of each other. Yeah, they were very respectful of each other's cultures, of each other's religions, etc. And so I feel we grew up in a very open, inclusive environment. And so we engaged with people from, all religions and backgrounds when we were growing up. And I think we were very, very lucky about that. And it definitely had a very strong influencing factor. I mean, I look at my parents, the way they even met, as a very romantic, very inspirational story. Having said that, no childhood is perfect. And my teenage years in particular, in the 1980s in Pakistan, and we as a family were living in Lahore. And it was what was called the Ziaul Haq era children. That's what we were called. And it was an interesting time because there was this enhanced conservatism that had come in, the kind of draconian values that was coming in, high levels of Islamization that was coming in at that time, which hadn't really existed before. And it definitely had an influence on how we were all parented. And I was talking to a friend recently, it's like, we all had these liberal parents and suddenly they all became these really scared conservative parents. And we as teenage girls were, the ones, girls are always the ones who are hit the hardest, proverbially hit the hardest in terms of being restrained in what we can do, what we can say, how we show up, how we behave, etc. So it's an Eastern cultural norm as well. And I think in Pakistan, for sure, it was definitely enhanced during that time. So unfortunately, I was one of those girls who didn't fit into the good girl mold. I wasn't the quiet, submissive, obedient teenage girl. I was kind of rowdy. I was rebellious. Um, all of our friends were a bit, I call it dynamic, but, maybe being defined a little bit differently by other people. So there was this feeling of growing up with a bit of shame because there was this overt sort of censorship or criticism of not, being as respectful or as obedient or as quiet or as good girl or overtly good girl as one should be. And so I remember growing up with a lot of shame about myself and not being able to fit into this mold as I've described. I carried that for a long time and saw psychologists about it. And I saw psychologists in Australia about it. And I never was ever able to really let go of the shame. And apart from the shame, it was also not feeling not good enough, low self-esteem, feeling like I'm not worthy, all of that kind of stuff. And it wasn't like I had ever done anything particularly bad. It was just we were in a very conservative time. And I just couldn't let go of it. And the psychologists as well were like, well, what are you ashamed about? And I'm like, well, it was hard to describe because there was cultural differences. They couldn't understand what I could be ashamed about. Or have this low self-esteem. But I had immense low self-esteem and self-worth. And it defined all of my life's decisions. It defined how I lived my life. It defined who I married. It defined why I married. It defined so many things. And I lived with it for most of my adult life. And it was until I came across NLP that I was able to shed it. And I was able to embrace all of me and fall back in love with that teenage girl who was dynamic and opinionated and individual and courageous and asserting her individuality and her sense of personness in an environment that wanted girls to disappear.
Yes, I can relate. Yeah, I
Yeah.
come from a
Yeah.
similar culture. Yeah.
Exactly. And childhood is a defining period of our lives. A lot of our unconscious beliefs, a lot of our unconscious values, a lot of our unconscious programming, how we perceive ourselves, our lives, everything is made up from that period, especially 0 to 7, which in NLP we call the imprint period, where we're just unconsciously incorporating the sense of who we are and what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man, and all these values, and culture is based on culture and family and all of this sort of stuff. And then the teenage years are again extremely defining, because it's at that point that you're kind of exploring who you are as a young woman or a young man or whatever it might be. People think teenagers are, rowdy and aggressive and all of that. And yes, they are, but they're also incredibly vulnerable, because it's like a little seed of this sense of who am I growing? And when you kind of shout down on it, or you shut it down, or you come down on it really hard, it does damage it. And so most of us will live our lives carrying that as our identity. And we will live our lives, our entire life with it. But we don't have to. And the past does not have to define the present, and it absolutely does not have to define the future. One of the things I say a lot in my trainings is something I truly believe, is that we're always self-defining, we're self-creating beings. We're not human beings, we're human becomings. We are verbs, and we are fundamentally creating ourselves every moment. And unconsciously, we're recreating an old narrative, an old script. But when we realize that, we can change it. We can create a brand new script. We can create a brand new sense of who we are, who we want to be, and then build that. And I think that's the greatest magic.
I love that. That's so fascinating. It's so inspiring that we can change that.
Yeah.
What I want to move on to ask is that, was there an unwanted change in your own life that drew you to NLP as a solution, and what that pivotal point was? And we will go on to you explaining what NLP is as well after that. So was there such an unwanted change, pivotal moment?
There always is. You don't get into these things just like that.
Exactly.
There was actually. We were living in Dubai, my husband, myself, and our 2 children. And we were living the life. My husband had a great job. We were living the life that everybody dreams of having, living in a place like Dubai. We lived in the best part of town. We had great cars. We had fantastic holidays. We had all of the external trimmings that, people aspire to and think that, okay, well, I've got that. I'm living my best life. And I had all of that. At the same time, I was so deeply, deeply unhappy, and my relationships were shot to pieces. My husband and I were not getting along very well. I had a job. I like to call it my previous life, but I used to be in media. I was in journalism, and I used to make
Oh,
documentaries. And
wow.
so when I came to Dubai, I did have some friends over there, and people would say to me, friends who knew me from before, they said, "Ali, what's happened to you? You're changed." And I was like, I was in such a deep depression. I said, I feel like um, we're all born with a quota of words, and I feel like I've used up mine. So I
Oh.
have nothing to say to anybody, and I feel like I don't have the capacity to take on anybody else's either. So I don't have the capacity to hold anybody else's words. And so I was in this really deep depression. I used to sleep all day. I used to wake up only in the morning so that the kids would know that they had a mother, and I'd drop them to school, and then I'd come back, I'd go back to sleep, and I'd wake up to pick them up from school and bring them back, and and the maid would do whatever she had to do, and and it was the most vacuous, empty life that I've ever led. And when I look back on it now, I feel like this low humming self-worth, this low humming self-esteem that had run as an undercurrent throughout my life sort of peaked over there. Not overtly, but just that's where the boil burst. And so it burst in the form of depression. It burst in the form of, like, what am I doing? This life is meaningless to me, and it feels meaningless. And I remember driving down the main highway, which is Sheikh Zayed Highway. And I remember driving down there and one day and thinking in my sexy Jeep and thinking, if I could just turn the wheel this way, I could end this pain. Because I used to have my blood pressure would always be at like super high levels.
Oh,
And
no.
I could just end it right now. And the thought that came to me next was, well, I have kids, and then I was like, the next thought after that was, well, they will move on. They're young. They will, okay, they'll miss their mother, but they'll move on. My husband would move on. I knew it would take him a heartbeat to move on. But the thought that came after all of that was that if I was to end everything now, there wouldn't even be a ripple of the fact that Aliyah ever existed. My life was so vacuous, was so superficial, that whether I existed or whether I didn't made absolutely no difference to anyone. And I couldn't bear that. I couldn't bear that that's how shallow my life was. And at the same time, I used to beat myself up because, there's this, you're living in a place like Dubai that there's a huge disparity. You can see the haves and the have-nots anyway. And then being part of the haves and having so much and more, it's like you should be full of gratitude. And so there was this constant, not just this sense of shame of that I should be grateful and I'm not being grateful, but it was just chaos in my head. But there was a sense of whether I lived or whether I didn't, there was no difference in the world to anybody or anything.
Oh, how sad.
Yeah, it is. And we as human beings are built for meaning, actually. And that's what I've learned. And I'll go into that as we move on. That's what gives life color, is the fact that when we live life with purpose, when we live life with meaning, and people can have really difficult, challenging times and feel hopeful and feel grounded and feel, like living life fully. And you can have people who have everything who just feel separated from life and have no meaning. And it's because we're built for challenge. We're built to have meaning and purpose. And we made a decision. My husband was being transferred somewhere else. The relationship wasn't really working. And so we made a decision that I would move back to Australia with the children because we'd come from there. And that was another thing. I wanted my children to have the Australian lifestyle for whatever the reasons were. And I want them to grow up in one culture. I didn't want them to be children who are traveling around too much. And I left at a time, went back to Australia, and it was a time when I was completely financially dependent on my husband. And I was also emotionally dependent on him. I didn't have a sense of my own individualism. I'd lost that along the way. I had, just taken on this identity, which many women do, of, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and that's it. That's it. That's all I am.
Nodding my head here, relating to so much as a lot of women will be, especially
so
women.
many women, and it's cross borders, it's cross cultural, it's every part of the world this happens, and in our part of the world, sadly, even more, because that's considered the height of what it means to be what it means to be a woman, to get married, have kids. And so I went back to Australia. I was really lost. I had a lot of fear in me. I had so much fear in me because I didn't know whether the marriage was going to survive. I didn't know whether I was going to have a husband tomorrow, kind of thing. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I was financially dependent on him, and he's living on the other side of the planet. So was he even going to honor the children and me? Now, this is not about him. He's an honorable guy. But all of these fears, and these are realistic fears. And I had all of these, and I was sitting with a very close friend of mine, and, angels come in different shapes, and she's mine. And I was sitting and talking to her, and I said, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't need a psychiatrist. I don't need a psychologist, because I know there's nothing inherently wrong with me. I just feel really lost. I feel really stuck. I don't know what to do. I just need somebody to help me figure out what to do, and then I'll do it. I can do stuff. I just don't know what it is. And so she said, well, there is such a thing as life coaching. And I was like, life coaching? What the hell? What does that mean, life coaching? You someone teaching you how to live? And I said with such sarcasm. And she goes, isn't that what you're asking, Aliyah? And I'm like, I guess I am. That is what I am asking. Got me thinking. I started researching. I found an institute in Melbourne. I was living in Melbourne and I needed something that was, I could go to easily. I couldn't travel around the country. And so I found this institute. I signed up pretty fast, actually. That was one of the quickest decisions I've made. I signed up to become a coach, actually, because I had this two-way thinking that I wanted for myself and I needed a new career. I was aware of that. My media career, my journalism had died. I needed a new career. So I thought this is like killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. And in the process of that, I found NLP. To say that it changed my life is an understatement. It transformed my life. And it didn't happen in one day. It didn't happen in one course. It didn't even happen by the end of finishing the training. But because of the trajectory it enabled me to put myself on, I live on a different planet today. I am a different person today. I can't even relate to that other version. I love her. I have so much compassion for her because I know she's trying to do her best. So I have a lot of love and compassion for her. But the Aliyah today is a different animal. And I love Aliyah today. I'm proud of Aliyah today. And I love my life today with all its challenges. And do challenges stop? No, they don't. But I believe challenges are our greatest gifts. And so, yeah, that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. Honestly, Alia, you are so inspiring. That's so inspiring. And
Thank
I
you.
know from what I've seen, other interviews and research, you have such a way with words.
Oh, really? Thank you.
And
Thank
also
you.
just being willing to open up and you're showing vulnerability and honesty, which I think will help so many people not feel alone, because I think a lot of us go through some of the things you've mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I will add to that, and it's a core value, and that's why I will add to it. There've been times in my life where I felt I really needed to have people around me who understood or who'd been there, who could guide me, who could hold space for me, or who could be my guiding light, who could be my lighthouse. And they weren't there at that time. And it felt very dark. And it's one of my core values, which is be the light for others. And if you've been on a journey and we share our journeys, and if it resonates with anybody, and maybe there's somebody who is maybe where I once was, and to be able to hear that, okay, I'm not alone, or oh, there's hope, or okay, somebody else has been through it too and they got through it, so can I. And we share our successes and we share our strengths and we share the beautiful moments. And that's nice. That's great. And I think it's also important to share, especially if you have achieved a level of success and etc. It is important also, in my opinion, to share the vulnerabilities and share the times that make us all human, and to know that it's okay. We can all
Yeah.
get there. You just keep going. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what connects us, yeah, as human
Mm,
beings. I love that. And I believe in that. That's what I believe in doing as well. That shining that light when you've got out of the darkness yourself. Yeah.
mm.
Now I'm sure people who are not familiar with NLP are wondering what exactly is NLP,
Okay.
if you can explain a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I can explain it in two different ways. Well, the first way I want to explain it is this. There was this time in Sydney. I was returning home from a training that I'd been conducting on NLP. And, it's a long day. You've been talking all day. You've been engaging all day. I was in the taxi going home, really tired. And of course, I had to get one of those chatty taxi drivers. And so he was like, what do you do? And, et cetera. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to talk. And my brain's kind of, has shut down for the day now. So I'm trying to, out of politeness, blab away about kind of what I do and what NLP is. And He was listening to me, and I was kind of, not really even paying attention to what I was saying. And he goes, "Oh, wow, that's amazing. So that's kind of like having a manual for your brain." And I immediately sat up, and I'm like, that's exactly what it is. That is a fantastic description. It's a manual for your brain. And so what NLP essentially is, NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And what it does is it looks at the interrelationship between what's happening neurologically for us in our mind, in our head, in our bodies, if you like, linguistically, the language we use, and the programming, which is our behaviors, our complex behaviors, as we call it, which is made up of all our beliefs and values and history and what influences us and what's causing us to behave in certain ways, get the outcomes we get. And so they all interact with each other. So our psychology will impact our behaviors and our language, and our language will impact our psychology and our behaviors, and our behaviors will impact our language and psychology. And so NLP fundamentally looks at how we create our reality. We're not really that interested in content, which is the story, our meaning making, because one of the definitions of NLP is a subjective experience of reality. And when we go through, and I'm not going to, go too much into the detail of the structures to just, bore your audience, but when we look at how people create their reality, because reality is not is not something concrete and outside of us. We never experience reality or the external as it is. We experience it as we are. And so everything is a subjective experience. The way we are internally is going to influence how we experience something that happens externally. And so the meaning, or the content, as we call it, the story, is, we know as NLP people, is something we call surface structure. It's just how somebody is making sense of something they've experienced. But we as NLP people want to look at what's underneath it. What are some beliefs that lie there? What are some values that lie there? What are the history that lies there that's causing them to have this meaning and behave in this way? And so the magic of NLP fundamentally is that we can literally create the life we desire. We are not at the mercy of living the life we have necessarily, or life that we were destined to, or any of that. So living life on purpose versus on default, as I like to call it. So essentially, that's what NLP is. It's the manual for our brain. It's looking under the bonnet to understand what drives us, what's holding us back, and to be able to change every aspect of it if we want to and desire to.
That's very empowering, very empowering. So how exactly has it helped you? You mentioned it's helped you. If you describe it as being a kind of an awakening for you, tell us a bit more about that.
So when I got into NLP, I didn't actually know about it. I'd never heard about it. I took me ages to even pronounce it and remember what NLP stood for. And then, and again, it wasn't the immediate. I did a training, I did practitioner, I did master, I did the whole diploma of coaching, I did all of this, sort of all these other workshops as well. And it's, you rebuild yourself bit by bit. And so when I started, and this is just one example, but I've got so many, and I hope I can remember a few more. When I started, I didn't believe, one of the strongest limiting beliefs I had was that I was not capable of earning any kind of real money. Even though I had worked before, I always took the money I earned as play money. And so my money was really there for, using it for, buying clothes or doing this or doing that. It wasn't really real. It wasn't something to take seriously because it wasn't really real money. My husband was the one who earned the real money. He was the one who earned money for the house, to buy a house or to rent a house or to buy these cars or to use in the supermarket for groceries or to go on holiday. That was real money. Savings. That was real money. And here's the thing. One of the things I do in my coaching, especially with women, I always ask them about their beliefs and relationship with money. Because money, our relationship and beliefs around money is a very defining, or is a mirror to how we perceive ourselves and beliefs about ourselves. And so, So I had all of these very limiting beliefs around money. And I never believed I was capable of earning enough real money on my own, of being able to financially fund myself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that belief has disappeared. It does not exist anymore at all. And because of that also, I'm a different person. I take myself seriously in a way that I didn't before. And I don't take myself seriously in a way I did before. And that sense of self-empowerment, that sense of personal agency, that sense of autonomy, that sense of being the master creator of my life and of my decisions and choices has changed, because also my relationship with money has changed. I am the mistress of my life. And I can back myself. I can choose to be me. I can be proud. I can have my own opinion, irrespective of how it may buck a system, because I can take care of myself. I can, no matter what happens, I am financially independent. I never thought I would be that. Even when I had a job before, I never thought I would be that. I mean, that's one small example. It's a big one, actually, because this hits on identity. Another one is, I remember once my children and I, we were sitting having dinner in Melbourne, and the three of us were sitting there. We were laughing, having a great time together. And at some point, my daughter suddenly became really silent. And I said, "Are you all right?" And she said, "Mom, you used to be such an angry person." And it broke my heart, because I had obviously taken it out on them. And I remember I used to identify as an angry person. I remember that. And so I knew what she was talking about. And, anger is a scab. It's a Band-Aid emotion that we use to protect ourselves. And it broke my heart that she said that, but it also gave me so much joy, because she was also seeing something different. And I'm really blessed. I have an amazing relationship with my kids. They enjoy being with me, and it is a no obligation relationship. That's how I like to see it. We enjoy spending time with each other. It wasn't always like that. I was very much in mom mode at times. I was an angry disciplinarian, not really a disciplinarian, but I knew there was a lot of anger in me, and anger's a scab, essentially. And I knew what was hiding under that anger. And once I was able to get rid of it, I didn't need that anger anymore. So my emotional equilibrium is transformed. And I just finished a training. It finished yesterday, and in one of the participants on the second last day or the last day or something said, but what if you end up becoming a different person with all of these learnings? But what if you're no longer you and you're a different person? I'm like, well, what does you mean? And we're always different, but also we're not. And, when we're sort of upgrading ourselves, or when we're learning new capabilities, it's not like we're changing. It's not like I'm now suddenly, I've grown two horns, or I've, a rose has transformed into a lily. That's not it. It's a case of I have more resources. I have more capabilities, and thus I have more capacity to have a much more resourceful relationship with my emotions, and thus have a much more resourceful relationship with myself, and thus a more resourceful relationship with others. So in a way, I'm showing up far more as a best self version. I don't like to use the best version of yourself. It's kind of becomes so cliched, but in a way, that is what it is. And so today, the quality of the life I live is far greater than the one I used to live. There are more challenges too, but they're higher quality challenges I'm dealing with. And so, yeah, I wouldn't give it up for anything.
I love that again. Your way with words and the anger as a scab. That's so great. And you mentioned your daughter. Now, can kids benefit from NLP too? I wondered. Did you teach it to your own kids?
Absolutely, they can. And in fact, we run NLP for teenagers, and a lot of the people who've done our trainings either work in schools or are parents and use NLP with their kids. And, there's some people who work in schools have actually created programs as co-curricular for kids in their schools at really young ages too. Absolutely, it works. Have I taught it to my kids? No, because kids are so contrary. So of course, if a mother tries to teach them something, they're like, "Oh yeah, don't do NLP with me, mom." But I do believe, because they were, impressionable age at the time, they were in their, preteens, early teens. I do believe they've picked it up through osmosis. Some of the things they say to me, how we talk, their own awareness, and their own. I mean, they're incredibly wise for the age they're at. I absolutely was not like that when I was their age, and of course it's all them, but I hope also to some degree it's also some of the, maybe through osmosis, they picked up some stuff through me, I hope.
So, yeah, on that topic of kids, I watched your TEDx youth talk. I loved the whole thing, but especially the iceberg analogy of the conscious and subconscious communication. And I wondered, how can we use subconscious communication to talk to the part of ourselves that's resisting change and get on board to a new, healthier future? How can we
Okay.
do that?
Yeah.
So you might want to explain the analogy first of all. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
iceberg image, half of it
Yeah.
below the water or whatever part of it.
Well, 95% below water, which is the unconscious mind, and 5% above water, above the waterline, which is the conscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a nutshell, our mind, which is different to our brain, our conscious mind is a goal setter and our subconscious mind is a goal getter. And so our mind, our conscious and unconscious mind, it works like a GPS machine. You put in the coordinates of where you want to go, and that's the conscious mind. And the computer in the background that figures out the route and the shortest distance is the subconscious mind. And so that's essentially how our mind works. And so everything we are saying, everything we think, which is a conscious mind, our unconscious mind is picking it up and saying, okay, those are the coordinates I need to get to. And so we are always creating our reality by the quality of our words, by the quality of our linguistics. And so if you want to change your life, change your language. One of the things we say about the unconscious mind, and everything happens at the unconscious level, by the way, it's 95% of our programming or of our mind is unconscious.
Well, that's incredible.
It absolutely is.
Mm.
And in a way, the conscious mind is the reflection of the unconscious. And whatever the conscious mind is aware of, it's already happened at an unconscious level. It's sort of, the conscious mind is slower than the unconscious. But the all behavior is generated by our unconscious mind. And so whatever, like I was saying, whatever we say, whatever we think, our unconscious mind is going to take that on as the coordinates on where to go, and then it'll create that. Now, the unconscious mind also does not recognize a negative. So often people will come to me and they say, well, I'm really anxious, or I don't want to feel anxious anymore. Or I don't want to feel angry anymore. I don't want to be scared anymore. And so when we say things like that, the coordinates are the subconscious mind will remove the don't, and we'll keep going there. And so the destination or the coordinates for being confident, happy, joyful are very different to the coordinates for not being unhappy or not being anxious or not being angry. And so the language we use is really, really critical, because most people language in the negative, and then they question why they keep creating the same issue or experiencing the same issue over and over and over again. Is fundamentally because they're giving the wrong coordinates or the wrong languaging or the wrong destination to their subconscious mind.
So true. We do that. Like, oh, I don't want this. Why is this happening to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, So in NLP, and in coaching, what we say is you want to language it as you want it. And there's another saying we have that if you can language it, you can have it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first things I do in my trainings and my coaching is to pay attention to how people are communicating. What kind of language are they using? Are they using what we call enabling and enabled language, or are they using disenabling language of things they don't want?
So is it basically let's use positive language?
Positive language can often mean just saying, "Oh, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good," when you're not feeling good. And that creates what we call cognitive dissonance. Right? I mean, oh yeah, I'm happy, everything's fine, I'm great, I'm great, I'm great. And you're feeling terrible inside. That's what we call toxic positivity. It makes you feel
Mm-hmm.
worse because
Yep.
there's no congruence with how you're feeling and what you're saying, but you're expected to say that because that's how, and it doesn't work that way. This is
Mm-hmm.
a little bit different. This is actually helping people to enabling them to think about how do they want to feel instead. If they're feeling all these negative things, how would they like to be feeling instead? If they're having a terrible relationship, what kind of relationship would they like to have instead? Or they're not achieving, they're not succeeding, maybe they're failing. What do they want instead? And when we start helping them create language around it, we're basically giving the subconscious mind totally different coordinates. It's the
Ah,
example of
okay.
getting in a car and going for a drive and saying, "Hey, where should we go for a drive?" Like, "Oh, I don't really care, but just not near the airport area because it's a real rush there." And like, "Oh," and then you sort of invariably end up in those types of places. Like, "Well, I didn't want to come here. Why was I here?" Because that's the only language we gave. So our mind works in exactly the same way with 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 everything.
Yeah. It'll give us what we don't want if we keep focusing on what we don't
Yeah.
want.
And so we say, if you can language it, you can have it. What you focus on is what you get.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. Right. The other thing, when there's a part of us inside that is stuck, most of us tend to try and separate ourselves from that side of us that's stuck, or that side of us that we feel is sabotaging us, or any of those versions. Right. And in fact, that side has a very strong positive intention. It is there for our well being. It might be doing it in a way that we don't feel is serving us. But if we can befriend it, if we can acknowledge its positive intention and recognize what that positive intention potentially is, because invariably these stuck parts of us, they're touching on core needs, core values, things that are deeply unconsciously important to us, and also to keep us safe. And most of us, we get even more stuck when we're fighting within ourselves with these paths, so to speak. But when we can acknowledge and recognize, okay, I know you have the positive intention for me. What is it? And then, and we have a lot of NLP techniques that actually work with exactly this kind of stuff, where you
Mm-hmm.
can connect with these unconscious parts and recognize what positive intentions there are, and find more resourceful ways to achieve that positive intention, to eliminate the sabotage, to eliminate that disconnect, and enable us to be able to move more fluidly and more congruently in the direction we actually desire.
Great. And I think we're going to move on to hearing some of
Yeah.
those techniques. Um, so, so if someone is so overwhelmed by change, and I've been in that position myself,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of us have,
All of us have.
and you get into that literally shutdown mode. Therapists might call it like the freeze mode, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn that we have. That kind of shutdown. Then what is one simple 5-minute NLP tool they can use to move forward from feeling paralyzed to taking some action. And I just want to give an example of that in my own life. Is not too long ago, I had to just rush out of my apartment, move out of there because I'd got mold. It'd been tested, and there were severe amounts, very dangerous amounts, and it was affecting my health. I literally had to get out of there as fast as I could. And I remember I had no idea I wouldn't be coming back to that home. It was
Wow.
too unhealthy for me. I tried to pack a hand luggage of just a few things, And I remember my mind was so shut down. I couldn't even pack a bag. I couldn't function. I just threw whatever the heck in there. And then after that also, I was in a freeze mode. This totally changed my life. I had to toss most of my belongings out, my furniture, my clothing got destroyed. But yeah, this shutdown mode. So what is a simple technique?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really, really good question. And here's the thing, in the world we live in today, it happens more often than not, where we'll experience that sense of overwhelm many times in our life. And the secret is how to deal with it. Now, when overwhelm happens, when we go into this fight, flight, freeze mode, often what's happening is we are looking at whatever the situation we're in, whatever we have to deal with, we look at it as just one big chunk. And that can be too much to deal with sometimes. And so we go into freeze mode or overwhelm, whatever it is. And if we can break it down, that's the first thing. If you can break it down, it enables momentum. Now, there's this one concept. It's not really a technique. It's a concept, which is not really also NLP per se. I think it's Stephen Covey who came up with it, to give credit where it's due. Is this concept of being a circle of influence and circle of concern. Now, all of us have this huge circle of concern. So the example you gave of mold in your house, was there anything you can do about the mold or the mold happening? Probably nothing, right? How did it make you feel?
Powerless.
Powerless, right? We're in a world today where, don't really know what's going on. People talk about, is there going to be next world war or whatever? Is there anything we can do about it? No. And how does it make one feel? Often it'll make one feel hopeless and helpless and fearful. And so we have all of these things. We have this huge, what we call a huge circle of concern. There's all these things that are happening in our life, around us, to us, relationships, partners, children, whatever. And then that triggers the fight, flight, freeze. Right? Our amygdala, which is our reptilian brain, is just firing off, and we go into just very basic programming at that point. In this huge, big circle of concern with all this stuff in it, is a very small circle in the middle called our circle of influence. And the circle of influence in any situation is, okay, well, what's within my circle of influence right now? So as an example, you said that, you found out that your apartment had lots of mold in it. And so within your circle of influence, it was to move out, right? But the moment you start doing stuff, then that creates the momentum, enables one to feel more hopeful or more, a little bit more in control. I mean, as a small example, during COVID, my children were living in Australia. Australian borders were closed, and I live very far from them. And my thought before COVID was always, well, okay, it's fine because I can get to Australia if I need to. And they're adult kids, but still, late teens, they're adult kids. And, but if I need to get to Australia, I can be there within 24 hours. And so that gave me a lot of peace. That's fine. If I trust them, they're old enough, mature enough to look after themselves and, do whatever they're doing. But if I need to be there, I can be there in less than 24 hours. And then COVID happened and Australia shut its borders. And the level of anxiety I felt because of that, because even if I wanted to go, I couldn't. And I remember I was sitting one day, I was watching TV, and, as we were meant to do, just sit at home and watch TV. And I felt this, and this thought came that if something happened to my kids, I couldn't get there even if I tried. And this severe panic attack, I felt it rising within me, to the point where I felt it was going to choke me. And so that was my circle of concern. And the next thought that came was, what do I do? And I said, you know what? I'm going to go and bake a cake. And so it's got nothing to do with anything, but I got up out of that chair and I went and baked a cake. Did anything really change? No, but the way I felt did. And thus, whatever I did afterwards was more resourceful. And so what the circle of influence is a space within any space where you are feeling overwhelmed, you're basically focusing on your circle of concern, there is always, always, always a small circle of influence. It's like, okay, what's within my influence right now? And maybe it's like, you know what, I'll go for a walk. Or maybe I'll take this step or that step. And the moment we do that, we feel the emotional state changes. We feel a little bit more in control. We feel a lot more emotionally regulated. And then what that does is it takes us out of fight, flight, freeze. Amygdala calms down, and we're now being able to use the parts of our brain that are more evolved for more creative thinking. And so NLP fundamentally is the study of success, like why are some people super successful and others not, and how to model success. And all people who aren't successful or who are struggling are primarily focused on the circle of concern. And so what it does is it breeds greater levels of helplessness, hopelessness, fear, etc. And all successful people, without fail, enable momentum, success, etc. in their lives because they're primarily focused on their circle of influence. No matter what happens, they're like, okay, well, what's within my circle of influence right now? And that little shift of thinking has a massive impact on quality of life and sense of feeling empowered in your own life.
So getting yourself out of that mode, a 5-minute walk or a 5-minute whatever. So physically doing something.
Yeah, call a friend. Well, something proactively is like, oh, I've got all of this to do. How am I going to do it? Oh, it's in my circle of influence. You know what? I'm going to just finish this draft right now and I'm not going to worry about anything else. And when we do that, we just feel a little bit more empowered. You feel like you have a bit more of a handle on things. Is training our mind to be able to use it in the way it's meant to be used. That's one of the things I say in my training is that, we have such a powerful machine within us. And most people, if you don't know how to use it, it's like an out of control sports car. It'll actually crash. If you don't know how to drive a really strong sports car, it'll crash. But if you know how to drive, if you can take control of it, I mean, it can do stuff that most other cars can't. Our mind is the same thing.
Great. Thank you. So this leads straight into my next question. What are some other NLP techniques or exercises that can be beneficial for us when we're going through unwanted change?
One of the first things to keep in mind, unwanted change or any type of change creates levels of anxiety within us because we search for familiarity, something that we know feels safe. Even though it might be a really toxic relationship, it feels safe because it's familiar. And so the subconscious mind craves familiarity for the sake of safety. And so the first thing is to realize that when we're going through periods of change, periods of transition, I wouldn't say that techniques as such. It's more the overarching way of thinking. And it is very much, we have a saying in NLP that the mind body is one system. When we are in high states of change, you do want to listen to both because the brain might be running really, really fast and the body might be feeling exhausted. And so you want to be able to listen to both. Another thing that's really important when you are going through a lot of change, it's something we call outcome thinking versus problem thinking. It's sort of connected to what I spoke about earlier, but most people will think in terms of problems. But if we can transform and change how we think into outcome orientation, which is outcome thinking, what do I want? What's the purpose of this conversation? What's the outcome I want to achieve from this conversation? What's the outcome I want to achieve from whatever it is? The moment we start thinking like that, it stimulates the more developed parts of our mind. When we're in change, we often think about things in problem states, or what if this happens, what if that happens? And then we go into fight, flight, freeze a lot more. And so it's really important in moments of change to language things as we want them. right? Because most people are going to language things in terms of fear of, oh my God, what if that happens or something negative happens? And, the subconscious mind doesn't recognize a negative, and what you focus on is what you're going to get. And so in times of change, it's really important to be able to sit down, calm yourself through meditation, through breathing exercises, whatever it might be, and then think about, okay, what is it that I want through this period or on the other side? One of the things I tell a lot of people in our trainings are that, that the challenges that come our way, and change is a form of a challenge, are gifts from the universe for opportunities of growth. And that version of us, we are capable of growing into. And really, that's what life's journey is, to kind of self-actualize in some form. They only happen through challenge. And here's the thing with change, when change happens, and you were saying a little while ago, that, the house had all this mold and you had to throw all of this stuff out. And it can feel really, really traumatic and challenging. At the same time, in a way, that's a gift from the universe, because you're literally shedding the old. And the moment we shed the old, it allows for new to come in. And how we experience the external is also how we experience the internal. So one of the things that I tell people, especially when they're going through challenges and they're feeling overwhelmed, is like, go through your home, go through your cupboards, go through your bathrooms, your toiletries, and shed stuff you don't need.
Oh, I'm a huge believer of that.
Get rid of clutter. And you will find, as you do that, there's space that starts opening up inside as well. There's space in terms of intellectual thinking, in terms of emotional space, opens up inside of you as well. And so moments of change, to harness the power of that, is to recognize that this is a growth waiting to happen. And every single time we lean into that change or that challenge and we go through it, when we look back at that, we're like, okay, well, yeah, it was hard, but I got through it. And it doesn't feel as overwhelming as it did before we went through it. The problem is most people go into their comfort zone, which very quickly becomes one's cave of misery. And so whenever challenges come, they just feel so much bigger and so much more unsurmountable. But if we can roll with it, figure it out as we go along, that's where our nervous system is what we call upgrading and developing. That's when we're developing the skill sets and the capability, the emotional, the intellectual, the spiritual, the physical capability to deal with whatever it is. What I'm really saying is, okay, there's a situation, right? There's a lot of stuff in our circle of concern that we can't control. That's going to happen and there's nothing we can do about it. It's about coming from circle of influence. And then it's like, okay, what's fear? We make up these catastrophic, stories in our mind when we're in state of change of some sort, right? But really, all fear fundamentally is that I don't know yet. I haven't yet developed the capability. That's all it is.
I love that.
And we cannot develop the capability until we lean in and fumble through even. That's okay. But as long as we do it, some people will go into, like I said, into their comfort zone, which is their cave of misery, and life becomes very narrow. When people are in overwhelm, when they're dealing with life-changing situations, maybe, many years, marriage has broken down, loss of people, loss of job, there's so much uncertainty.
Mm.
And often we'll be blindsided by it. Happens just, suddenly. And in that moment, it's important to kind of take a breath, first of all, is to acknowledge it, that I'm feeling this. I'm
Yes.
fearful of this. I don't know what to do yet. Right. And then it's like, okay, and giving yourself that space to just breathe. And then it's like, okay, what is one small thing I can do to help myself right now? Again, coming from circle of influence, that one small thing may sound so irrelevant, but that one small thing is that little whisper from inside telling you that one step, because that one step, if you take it, then it'll enable that next step. and then that next step, and that next step. And that one small step, even if it means breathe, even if it means go outside and look at the scenery, whatever it might be, is a critical moment of realigning into equilibrium again. And then there are also some techniques. So for example, we have a technique called anchoring, right? Which is like stimulus response. So we can anchor the state of confidence, joy, happiness, all of these states that are resourceful states that we'd like to be in. And so when we may be going into overwhelm or stress or whatever, we can actually literally press on our anchor, and it can be what we call a physical anchor. We press a part of our body and we feel those feelings. It can be a song that can take us into or something auditory that can take us into that, creating that state within us. It can be something visual. Maybe we have a vision board or something, or some kind of visual that brings us back to ourselves or releases, feelings of joy, happiness, confidence, whatever it is that we want. So we can use things like anchoring to enable us to change our emotional state very, very quickly. There's also something we call reframing. And a reframe is literally changing our perspective of how we look at it and how we language it. So how can we reframe all of this into a way that may be a little bit more empowering and helpful towards us versus the previous language, which is actually not helping us at all, but actually hurting us. So for example, there's a massive change happening, and from every angle right now in this catastrophic thinking, we're like, you know what? This is nothing positive. I can't find anything positive out of it. But if you give yourself that space and the reframe of whatever it might be, it can be, is an opportunity for me to discover aspects about myself. This is an opportunity, and whatever you want to add after that will be more empowering for the mind, and thus how we approach something. And the moment that our linguistics has a direct impact on our emotional state, the neuro. And so when we have catastrophic thinking and catastrophic languaging, it dows ourselves, so to speak, with high levels of cortisol, stress hormones, and we go into fight, freeze. But if we can language it in a way that enables us to feel better, and it'll actually make us feel better, and it'll have an emotional shift inside.
That sounds great. Yeah, it would be so helpful to a lot of people. So, can NLP help people rediscover purpose after the losses they may face after an unwanted change? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what NLP is all about. It's about reconnecting to self. We can use the capabilities in any area of our lives. We can use it personally, we can use it professionally, and in any profession. It's a meta skill, so to speak. Now, that's exactly what our trainings are about, helping people to rediscover themselves, develop a connection back to themselves, find that higher purpose of what drives their passion and connects into that sense of internal meaning. And so it absolutely does, because what NLP does is it enables us to understand ourselves better. What's going on under the bonnet? What's going on with these emotions? What's going on with this thinking? What are internal needs? What's going on with this behavior? And then it's like, okay, well, languaging it as we wanted, reframing, and then discovering within all of that purpose of why we're here in the first place. Because here's the thing, we're not actually human beings having spiritual experiences. So we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're here for more. And as we lean in and recognize it, I think what NLP really did for me anyway, is it made me realize that every challenge that I'd faced was that opportunity for growth. And if I was to look back on my life, there isn't one thing that I would do differently, because all of it enabled me to grow into the version of myself I'm more and more proud of and love more and more every single day.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you could go back, Alia, and speak to your younger self, what would you say to her now?
I've often thought about this, and depending on my mood, there are different things I would say. I was a little bit of a rebel. I don't think I took life that seriously. I don't think I was particularly mature in a way that I wish I had been sometimes. But I think what I would tell her is really believe in yourself. You've got all the resources you need. You're going to be kick-ass. You're going to live your life well. It's an adventure. Have fun with it. Lean into life. You're going to love it. And you're going to be proud of the person you become, and trust that. Yeah. And I love that little girl today. And there's been a long time that I've been pushing her away, and I wish she'd done this, and I wish she'd done that. I wish I'd been more serious. I wish I'd been this. I wish I'd been whatever. But you know what? Through NLP, I've been able to discover she actually had all of those ingredients of passion and curiosity and excitement and her own uniqueness. And we get socialized out of it. And today I honor that uniqueness. And I love that little girl today. I didn't always, but I love her today. And I think that's the
Yeah.
greatest gift we give ourselves, is to love the version we are, because we are the gift. We are our own magic. And it's
So many people have such difficulty doing that. Yeah. And it's NLP that you credit having helped you get there.
yeah.
Now, Aliyah, if people would like to contact you and learn more about your classes, because, you've just touched on these things and you can really
Mhm.
delve deeper, how can they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, under my name, Aliyah Mohyeddin, and also my company, Dynamic Communications Consulting. They can find us on our website, which is www.dynamiccommunications.com.au. And that has all the information there as well. I'm very present on social media. My company is very present on social media. If you type in my name, I will spring up in some form or another.
I can put that in the show notes as well. I can write that in there as well.
Most of our trainings and NLP trainings, and we do many others as well, are all hybrid trainings. So we have people who can attend it in the room or online from anywhere in the world.
Oh, that's great. So people from the
Yeah.
US as well, wherever they are.
Yeah. And we regularly have people from Europe, North America, all over the place, Australia, everywhere. We have people attending.
Well, Alia, thank you so much for your time. I know you're such a busy woman. Thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you, listeners, as well. I hope this episode has inspired and empowered you to transform your life. I mean, learning from someone who's very inspiring herself. She's turned her life around so beautifully. And if you know of anyone who could benefit from learning about NLP, please share this episode with them too. See you next time.